All right, let's make a start then. Good evening, everyone. Hello, I'm Mel. I'm part of the trading team here at Breedr, farmer's daughter from North Wales. Since leaving university, I suppose my career has been solely based in the beef and cattle industry, and spent the last couple of years managing calf rearing units up and down the country. So yeah, I suppose gives me some sort of right to talk about calf rearing. Joining me tonight, very exciting, is Emily Bull, who's a PhD researcher at the RAU, who's got a presentation for us on early detection and BRD tools, which is good. Do you want to just give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, as Mel said, I'm Emily Bull. I'm a researcher at the Royal Agricultural University. My PhD is currently being written up, which is a bit of a long process, but I'll introduce myself a bit more when I start with the presentation.
Yeah. How long have you been working on this PhD?
The last 3 years. But in terms of working in the calf rearing industry, it's more like 6 or 7. So
yeah, plenty of experience then. Just quickly, I'm just going to post out a poll. As well, guys, anyone that wants to ask some questions as we go through, there's a Q&A box or a chat box at the bottom. Just pop your questions in there. I'm more than happy to answer them. But I'm just going to post a poll on here now about what your main health concerns are for you on your rearing units. It is anonymous, so we can't see what your answers are, but if you could just should have launched on the screen now. I don't, can you see that, Emily?
Yep, I can see it.
Good, cool. Right, so just get a couple of people to answer that. Oh, I think it's
Hi.
Hey.
Good to see that there's a concern for pneumonia. That will make the webinar a lot more interesting.
It will, yeah, we're on the right track. Interesting. Anyone else before we end it? Right, I don't think there's a surprise here, but if I end it, will everyone be able to see the results? Let's see. Here we go. So 95% of you reckon that your main cause for concern on your farm is pneumonia, which, to be fair, isn't very surprising. It's obviously quite a concern. I think it costs something like £50 million a year for the industry. That's yeah, quite a big number. Right, I've got another one really quickly, Emily. I'll let you go in then. Vets are doing a really good job with BVD. They are, to be fair. There's a lot more testing going on at the moment, and yeah, dairy herds are taking it a lot more seriously, I think. Absolutely. Right, I'm going to do another one. So, do you vaccinate your animals? Let's launch that. This is a good sign. Interesting. Anyone else? Right, so 72% of you do, 28 don't. That'd be interesting. Right, okay. I'm going to do one more, but Emily's really sick of this now. I find these really interesting. It gives you a good picture, I suppose, of, yeah, a good sample. Right, last one, I promise. Right. So, would you be prepared to pay a bit more for your animals if they had been vaccinated before they came to you? That should launch. There we go. So if you knew that the dairy farm was going to give them an intranasal or whatever, would you pay a bit more for them?
Such a good question, such a good response.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Wow.
Fab. That's a definite yes. That's 100% yes. Everyone would. Oh no, I've got a 1. No. That was great though. So yeah, 95% of you guys would pay more, which is interesting. So I think we need to get back in touch with all these dairy farms, don't we, Emily? Right, okay, I'll hand over to you. You want to take us through your presentation?
Okay, fab. So I'll just share my screen. Can you just let me know that that's working?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Mel, for the introduction. Just to recap, we're going to be talking about an assessment framework for BRD that's been developed by the Royal Agricultural University. So I'll give you a quick introduction and background to the project before talking about the development of the framework, its use and the next steps. So just a little bit about my background. I'm a livestock researcher with a key interest in dairy and beef cattle, and especially the intersection between the two industries with dairy bred beef production. I lived on a mixed livestock farm in Devon whilst growing up, so I do have experience in extensive beef systems, but more latterly I've worked on dairy farms and managed the RAU calf rearing unit of black and white bulls. So my research focuses on system change and complexities in farming system, which I'm always keen to approach from very much a farmer-led perspective. I do truly believe that farmers are the experts, and the researcher's role is to support you, not tell you what to do. From my experience working in the dairy bred calf rearing sector, the key challenges for me are high disease incidence and antibiotic use, which is now reflected in a lot of my research. So onto the BRD framework. Before I dive in, I think it's useful to give you a very brief background to this work. The first key thing that we had to do before planning any development was to understand the industry a bit better. And that's because when designing anything, it's important to understand the needs of users, not assume what they want, which I think unfortunately a lot of technology companies do. And just as an example of how bad it can go, if you don't engage with your users, on the screen you'll see a quote from the past CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, who had originally laughed at the iPhone concept. We all know how that's going now. So in order to understand the industry, we spent a lot of time listening and talking to farmers to understand the key challenges and opportunities. This helped us to create personas, and you can see an example of one of those on the screen. So personas aren't real people, but they represent groups of people with similar characteristics. The example here is a young female farmer. We've also identified a further 7 key personas to represent different types of calf rearers in the industry. And these personas are beneficial because they help us to identify the key opportunities for development. And in this case, the opportunities are networking with other calf rearers, understanding pneumonia, access to direct calf sales and online information. So because we know the knowledge demand and opportunities in the industry from farmers themselves, we've been able to identify that there is a requirement for a BRD assessment framework. It's not just the farmer demand as identified through speaking to the industry, but also because the impact of BRD on lifetime productivity, antimicrobial use and welfare. And perhaps some of you are thinking that tools already exist for assessing pneumonia, and yes, they do exist. The Wisconsin score or the California test are commonly used for making treatment decisions, and there are also ear temperature gauges, milk machines and pedometers. So what's different with this tool that we've developed? Well, it's complete animal observation to look at different behaviours, not just clinical symptoms. And it can be used as a pen-side analysis tool. So you don't need to invest in expensive technology. And finally, it can be used as a discussion tool, but I'll come to that later. So in terms of actually developing the assessment, we first started to look at the scientific literature to find out what behaviours have been previously reported. So this search didn't look for clinical assessments such as your high temperature or your snotty nose and so on. So in the literature, you can find examples of where studies have been used to develop technologies that we're more familiar with. So for example, when a calf has pneumonia or is in the lead up to an event, it will have fewer visits to feed and reduce drinking speed. So those of you that are using milk machines will know that the machine will flag up entitled visits and those that haven't been consumed, as well as highlighting any calves with reduced drinking speed. Similarly, in terms of activity, milk machines have an alert for calves that have spent less time at the feeder. Although pedometers aren't that common in the UK, they are an example of technology that can be used and has been developed to predict pneumonia. So the next step in the development of our assessment framework was to speak to experts that have been involved in calf rearing for a number of years to ask them about the types of behaviour they saw in calves in the lead up to, during and after a pneumonia event. So that involved talking to 42 farmers and vets in the UK, in the US and Canada, which was actually 63 hours of data, which had to be transcribed and coded, quite a big task. So from the interviews, we started to develop a framework of behaviours associated with pneumonia. This isn't the entire table, but gives you an idea of the types of behaviours we're looking at. So for example, looking at ear carriage, that's a common way of predicting pneumonia, and I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with that. So we used both negative and positive quotes to illustrate when the calf was ill, as well as how it would look when healthy. And in this case, ears down shows poor health, whereas perky ears shows a healthy calf. So another example is responsiveness, which I can certainly relate to. Here, the negative quote probably suggests it's a bit late for that calf in terms of preventing lung scarring, but I'm sure that we've all been in that position where you know a calf has a problem because it has no interest in you. And on the other hand, whilst annoying, well, the calves that come up to you and start pestering you are probably going to be okay. So on the screen, you'll see the framework as a whole, which is probably a little bit too small to see. But as an overview, it includes two core domains. Firstly, the clinical signs, or more specifically, how the calf looks. And secondly, the behavioural expressions the calf is making. This is split into how the calf reacts, and that's to humans, feed, and other calves, and then how the calf carries out normal activities. And those are eating or drinking and activity level. In terms of finding new behaviours that weren't previously mentioned in the literature in the context of respiratory disease, we found a few. So the first one was room and fill. And I know that's also a reported outcome in other diseases, but in the context of pneumonia, we haven't really seen that reported before. Really what it would show is that the calf isn't going up and eating, which probably to a lot of us that are involved in it is quite a basic thing, but hasn't been reported. The next is hair coat condition, and that's possibly linked to the fact that the animal isn't grooming itself properly, or isn't being groomed by other animals. So you start to see the coat looking a bit starey. Then ocular appearance, and those of you that are familiar with the Wisconsin score, you'll know that Runny Eyes is a score in that system. But this actually was in relation to sunken eyes, so where they are a bit dehydrated, and that's just where they haven't been going up and getting water. And then eye contact, and that's eye contact with humans. So because calves are a prey species, when they are ill, they will try and avoid eye contact because they don't want to show us as a predator that they're ill. The next, motivation at feed, and that is similarly to the milk machine where you kind of get calves coming on and off the feeder. But if you're using teat systems, if you see a calf that's kind of coming on and off the teat, it might have a reduced motivation to feed. And then finally, stretching, which is one that I find was quite amazing that it wasn't reported in the literature before. And I know that when I've worked with calves before, my first thing to do is jump in the pen, get them all up and check that they're all stretching. But actually hasn't been reported in the case of pneumonia at all before. So after a lot of reading of previous studies and talking to a lot of experienced farmers and vets, we thought to ourselves that we probably could detect pneumonia a bit sooner by watching for behavioural indicators. So we set up a small trial on 76 dairy-bred calves to see if this would be true. The trial farm used a Wisconsin-style scoring method to identify calves with pneumonia, and over the course of 5 days, they treated 13 calves. So our assessment framework was used alongside to score behaviours which were recorded separately to the treatments. And upon completion of the trial, both scores were analysed, and we found that behaviour scores had been recorded 4 days prior to the treatment in BRD calves. And interestingly, no other calf displayed the behaviours at all. And the study showed that the earliest signs of pneumonia were drinking speed, level of activity and responsiveness towards humans. So how will we use this assessment? Well, as I previously mentioned, it is intended to be a pen-side analysis tool, but does have the potential to be developed into a precision livestock technology. However, our key focus and our key objective is for it to be used as a discussion tool. And by that, I mean that this BRD assessment framework is not a golden bullet. It is a useful management tool for predicting pneumonia problems earlier, but it is critical to also understand why pneumonia is happening in the first place. The calf rearing industry is very complex, and it is not always the fault of the rearer that pneumonia outbreaks occur. It is really important to understand that movement and mixing of young calves contributes to pneumonia significantly, as well as stress playing a big role in reducing immune response. Also, the environment in which calf is reared needs to be taken into consideration. So in summary, yes, the tool can improve pneumonia prediction and certainly contribute to better understanding, but the key to reducing pneumonia is building better relationships, buying direct where possible, controlling early calf rearing management at the dairy by having trusted and direct relationships, and making sure that they have a suitable housing environment. So in terms of next steps, the framework is currently being validated by SRUC on a larger group of animals to refine the tool. And then we hope to engage with farmers again in order to understand the best method for how it can be used in the field and used as a discussion tool to best improve calf health. And finally, I'd just like to acknowledge the financial support for the study, which has come from Zoetis, the RAU and AHDB for lamb, as well as also saying thank you very much to Breedr for letting me present today and for all of you for listening.
That was great, Emily. Thank you. Guys, if you've got any questions for Emily, please do pop them in the chat box on the bottom. It'd be, yeah. You can pick her brains right now while she's still here. So go for it. Thanks, Emily. One thing, when we obviously went over this and I find fascinating, but can you please talk about the kneeling again in the USA? Because I can't, I just can't get over it.
Yeah, so I did a lot of the interviews in the US. So I went over to Texas and I spoke to a lot of rearers over there. And they talked about a concept which they call knuckling, which I had no idea about, and was quite embarrassed at the time because I didn't have a clue what these guys are on about, but there was a big group of farmers that were talking about it. And what it is or how they explained it was when calves walk forward, if they're feeling a bit ill, they drag their feet and that causes the bones to seem like they're cracking. So you hear a bit of a click, which is what they call knuckling.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating because we were talking about the stretching and how for us it was obvious, but how it's never been put into any sort of literature before. And yeah, I suppose they felt the same.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, What are your thoughts on milk machines then? Are they useful, or what are your thoughts?
So milk machines are useful as a tool for getting your calves fed.
Yeah.
They don't replace going in and making sure you've got healthy calves. So worked previously with students who've gone in and just looked at the milk machine, looked for calves to be flagged up rather than going in and actually checking the calves themselves. So yeah, use them as a tool to improve the time that you have in the calf shed, but don't use it as an excuse not to be in there.
So on this trial, were they on milk machines or were they bucket fed?
They were tea bucket, not tea trough.
No. Interesting. I've got a question here. Are calf igloos better than sheds for calf rearing? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, good question. I think the answer is it depends on the calf shed. There are so many different calf sheds. I guess my comment would be check your ventilation. Calf igloos are great because they allow you to, the calf can have a choice of environment, so it can go out or it can be in. They're also really good for kind of hygiene purposes, that you can pick them up and spray them out after every batch. That's great. But if you can't afford calf igloos, or that's not the way that you want to go and you've got a shed, just make sure that you've made sure your ventilation is good. There's lots of ways that you can do that. Checking the ventilation and the drafts. There's lots of ways around it, and there's different ways of doing it, but there's not the UK doesn't have a one size fits all approach.
No. Yeah, there's smoke bombs, wind tunnels, there's all sorts out there in a shed. But yeah, I suppose it depends what you've already got, what you're working with.
Yeah.
Right. Any difference between teat fed, bucket reared or suckled? Is that in terms of susceptibility to pneumonia, or I'm not sure? If you can comment back on that one, that would be good. Yes, right. So they are more susceptible to pneumonia. So is there a difference between teat fed, bucket and suckled?
Again, I'd probably take that back to the hygiene. So if you're teat feeding, clean them regularly. Like, don't skimp on that because it makes a massive difference. Clean your whatever you've got, clean it. In terms of the teat feeding, I guess depending on whether you're talking about the milk machine or not, the milk machine can help you in terms of picking up animals, but as I said before, don't rely on that. In terms of pneumonia, I don't think there's much difference in between them. It's just the hygiene element.
Do you reckon the immune system of suckled animals are higher because they're with them the whole time? Do you reckon that has any sort of difference or not?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's obviously the ideal. I think in terms of the system, that's not what many people have the ability to do, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. What did I read? There was something about the cost of pneumonia per calf, and for a dairy calf, it was like £43. But for a suckled calf, it was like 83 or something. It was a big cost difference. But I suppose that cost isn't directly medicine. That'll be weight gain and all that sort of stuff as well, and labour and everything.
I have to admit that most of my research has been around kind of the artificial feeding of calves as opposed to suckled.
God, yeah.
Because there's not the same problem.
No, well, it's not, is it? No, absolutely. We've also an additional observation with pneumonia is dry nose. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what that is actually recorded in the work that we did. Difference in noses. Again, that comes back to dehydration.
Yeah. Another interesting fact for you. 70%, there was a test of I'm reading this out now because I'll forget the numbers mixed up. 70% of animals at an abattoir had lung damage. 35, only out of, I don't know what the number was, but out of all them, only 35% of them had actually been treated for pneumonia. So it's, and the animals with lung damage weighed 21 kilos lighter than the animals with the healthy lungs. So it's obviously, you need to look for it because it's not obviously obvious in your face, which is obviously all these points that you've just been raising. It's a
and we Mel and I had a discussion about this before, about kind of when you should go in with antibiotics, and thinking about prevention. So yeah, vaccinate wherever you can. It looks like from the poll, loads of people are doing that already, so that's great.
Good. Yeah.
Do make sure you do the vaccination. Also, in terms of making decisions around treating for pneumonia, it's really difficult because there's a lot of pressure to reduce antibiotics in the industry, but the rumour line is very much like, do it because it's necessary, and just be responsible about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the lung lesions is a big concern for welfare long term.
When is the ideal time to go in with antibiotics? Shouldn't need, I suppose, if you're already vaccinated. In theory.
Yeah, that's the ideal, isn't it? But in terms of going in with antibiotics, I would tend to use a temperature, take the temperature, and if it's over 39.5, then, and you have other symptoms, then go with giving the antibiotic. Yeah, there's the Wisconsin scoring method is very good in terms of making a treatment decision. The method that we're looking at using is about catching it earlier so that you can think about, so when you think about if you're thinking about needing to treat, potentially giving Metacam at that earlier stage, and getting that animal back up and drinking and eating, quite useful.
Yeah, I've got questions coming in from left, right and centre here. I don't know where to look. What's the difference between the nasal and injection vaccination? Which would be your preference?
So they're both effective. I'd say, think about how you're treating them, how you're doing it. I know that the intranasal is a bit of a faff sometimes, and they can quite often just blow it out on the floor again.
Yeah.
Preference when I was doing it would be to go in with an injection because I know it's in the animal. But then yeah, the intranasal is supposed to get there a bit quicker. So I would say talk to your vet about it. They're the people that are selling you the vaccination, and actually they should be the ones advising on that. I'm not a vet, and I don't want to say that I know exactly, but that the preference would be for me the injection. Yeah.
Just remember being covered by intranasal over me rather than calves.
Intranasal and snot.
Yeah, it's lovely. I usually inject all my calves with antibiotic as soon as they come on the farm, but I've been advised by my vet not to. Would you say for me to carry on giving them? Ooh.
Yeah, really, really difficult. If you're getting calves from multiple sources, I know if you're getting them from a big calf company, potentially, depending on how many calves you've got in, a lot of them are coming from different farms. So you do need to try and protect them. Generally, we did work on a bit of a trial to try and use Solisil instead, which is an anti-inflammatory. That has shown to be quite effective. But again, I talked to your vet before doing that. Giving antibiotics prophylactically is not advised, because we shouldn't be doing that in UK practice. But there is definitely the argument for the welfare case. And like Mel's just said about how many calves have lung damage at slaughter is a real concern. I guess without knowing your system, it's quite difficult to think about this. But if you can buy direct, if you can go try and source from a single dairy or a few dairies, that would be kind of a way of getting around it. But yeah, without knowing the system and being able to talk, it's quite difficult to talk.
Yeah.
To advise on that one. But do talk to your vet. I don't want to take over a vet's role.
Don't get paid enough for that. Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm literally like swamping here. If calves have to travel in a trailer for a few hours back from market and there are mixed batches from different farms, should we be treating them with something to control disease when they arrive on farm? Right.
Similar to the previous question.
Yeah. I'm just going to do a sales pitch here because, yeah. So obviously through Breedr, last week we did launch our own, I'm just trying to share my phone screen, but I can't. We did launch our live-to-live trading. So you are now able to buy calves, cattle, all sorts through the app directly. I don't know, can you see my screen? Share screen. Ooh. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, fab. Okay, so Breedr are now obviously selling high health status animals with data. If you go onto your app, open it up, on the left hand side there's a little tab for trades. On there we have listed numerous listings for animals and calves and all sorts. So if you want to buy animals that only come from one single source, please do get in touch. More than happy to try and help you find some calves. We will be doing colostrum spot checks. We'll be doing colostrum spot checks on the dairy farms as well, so we can assure that you will be buying the best quality possible through us. But it is commission free at the moment, so if you do want any sort of help with either buying or selling animals, please do get in touch with me. Right, that's my sales pitch over. Right, what else did we have? What is the age of a calf when the least stress will occur in disbudding, etc.? That could possibly lead to bringing on subclinical pneumonia. We're having quite a similar conversation the other day, weren't we, on this?
Yeah, so a lot of that is about stress. Because of the way that the immune system works, if you have a stressed animal, its immune system will go down, and then you'll get, because you're likely to have pneumonia pathogens in the shed anyway, that's when it will kind of rear its head. So if you can reduce stress, again, none of these questions are very easy to answer because it's very complicated. So in terms of age, Mel's probably a better one to advise on age. But fit it in with your system. So if you can reduce stress as much as possible, and you can make sure you've got Metacam in there, 100% make sure you've got Metacam in there. And I know a farmer was talking the other day about he was doing a different method. Mel, do you want to?
I can't remember.
But in terms of age.
Oh yeah, we had some older animals and some much younger animals being dehorned, but they were putting the animals, weren't they? Oh, I can't remember.
The one thing that I'd say about stress, and this isn't necessarily related to dehorning, but stress and vaccination. If you have a stressed animal, you might as well just put that vaccination straight on the floor, because the way that the immune system works is that it won't be effective. So when people say that they vaccinate as soon as calves come onto the unit, that concerns me. We used to do it, and I'm not sure how effective the vaccination was. Make sure that the calves aren't stressed. So even if that means waiting a few days before they're settled in, that's probably a better shout than doing it immediately, because they're going to be so stressed from the travel, especially if they're mixed as well and going through collection centres. That's when you want to be avoiding vaccination.
Yeah, or obviously come through us and we'll try and get the dairy farm to vaccinate for you before you even buy them.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. But like, the gold standard, I'm not selling Breedr because I'm here, but the gold standard is if you can get them vaccinated at the dairy farm before they're moved, that really is going to help you a lot in terms of pneumonia.
Yeah, absolutely. Is pneumonia more or less prevalent in calves born from mid-April onwards? That's
Tricky.
an interesting one. Yeah.
And it really depends on the type of April that we have. So I always used to hate getting calves in January, because I knew that they were born over Christmas.
Off over Christmas, yeah.
Yeah, that would be my worst time to get calves in. If they're born in mid-April, yeah, maybe the weather's going to be a bit better. But as we, when was the beast from the east? April. We had calves coming in that week, and they were really bad. So again, difficult. And I've also heard that a lot of farmers really struggle in the summer with high heat temperatures and high humidity. So yeah, the biggest problem for pneumonia is when temperatures go up and down.
Yeah, it's a fluctuation, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's really cold in the morning and then it gets really warm in the afternoon. That would be the worst time. But in terms of actually,
when it's still and when it's damp and all the time.
yeah. So that's where ventilation and good housing plays its role, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, right. I think we're going to leave it there. But thank you very much. If anyone's got any questions or queries at all, please do get in touch with me. It's mel@breedr.co. Either get in touch with me or trading@breedr.co. Any one of the team can get in touch. But if you do want anything with calf rearing, more than happy to give you a hand. And I'm sure if there's any other questions for Emily, I can pass them on back your way.
Yes, please do.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. Really enjoyed that. And I hope you guys did too. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll hopefully see you next week. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.